Welcome. Bill Kenny here with the Belly to Belly podcast. And today we've got an awesome guest. I'm excited to welcome Allen Yesilevich from Accelevents. And Allen, welcome. You're the head of marketing and growth, which is just an awesome title. So welcome today.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited about joining you today.
Well, this is great. So our audience are organizations that run events, they host events, they have trade missions, they do all sorts of exciting things. We also have a fair amount of audience members who participate in events. They are international companies that are coming to the US to exhibit in US trade shows and take advantage of, obviously, our massive event ecosystem here. So before we kind of dive into a variety of questions, it'd be great if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about yourself and about Accelevents as a platform. And obviously, you guys have had some massive growth in the last year, but you want to give us a little bit of an overview of yourself and Accelevents?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the head of marketing at growth at Accelevents. I've been there for several months now, and Accelevents is an all-in-one virtual and hybrid events platform. So whether you want to do an online trade show, a summit, any type of event, we can power it for you. And our platform incorporates everything from multiple stages, a lobby area, attendee engagement, virtual exhibitor spaces, and even gamification like a leaderboard center. So it pretty much covers the full gamut of when you think about virtual events. And I've been with the organization for several months right now, and 2020 was obviously a very interesting year, and I'll jump right into it. So prior to joining Accelevents, I was at an in-person event and experiential agency, right? Focusing on physical trade shows, physical exhibits, pop-up stores, road shows, anything that brings people together in a physical space. We help brands accomplish it. And like all brands and event organizers, 2020 was a very difficult year where everyone, essentially had no choice but to pivot into this digital realm. So there was a sense of discovery. What are we going to do? Everyone was trying to figure out the most optimal way to pivot into virtual. And our agency and all of our clients were having the same conversation. And to be frank, it was very challenging. It was truly very challenging. I feel like in the event space, digital was always this kind of enigma. Like everyone wanted to incorporate digital within their live face-to-face experience, but nobody really knew how to leverage it. And 2020, if anything, what it did is it created this catalyst of innovation, buy-in, acceptance that, even though we were forced, so to speak, into the situation, we can really have an engaging activation virtually and digitally. And what Accelevents did was they captured the zeitgeist of people, beginning to accept the notion that virtual can be a very effective medium for reaching your goals, whether it was engagement, lead generation, marketing campaigns, whatever it may be. And our platform essentially allowed event organizers and brands to meet their goals in a digital world.
It's crazy. I mean, the last 12 months has been just a tsunami of change in the event space. So just even looking at, at the physical things of Accelevents, I believe this year or last year at this time, you had about 3 employees, if I'm not mistaken. What's the team up to now?
Yeah, I think maybe there were a few more than 3, but certainly in 2020, we've just seen this massive acceleration in growth. And for obvious reasons, the whole world of events turned to figure out how to deliver solutions digitally. So Accelevents was well equipped to kind of put the brand in a position where we could answer questions for what our customers and prospects were looking for. So, we were quite fortunate that we immediately recognized product market fit, and we experienced this organic demand of customers, event organizers, marketers finding us through the web, whether it was through Google or some articles we were mentioned in, and it just created this rocket ship, this hockey stick effect. And now we're at the point where 2020 was this discovery phase. 2021, I feel, is going to be this optimization phase. We are now part of the conversation of what events will look like in the future. So now the
Well,
conversation shifts to how do you leverage Accelevents or any other virtual events platform to help deliver on your goals in 2021 and beyond?
yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue. Is if we can pull out the crystal ball and dust it off a little bit, and so right now we've got we have this sort of that we anticipate in-person events again. Maybe they begin coming online later this year, or certainly going into 2022. And we've now, as you said, proven that virtual events can be very effective. So if you were going to pull out your crystal ball and today the meter is 100% sort of at virtual events, and then kind of zero at in person. And there's also this thing that's being talked about in terms of a hybrid event, which probably a few have done some testing in, but it hasn't, there's not mass sort of hybrid events at this point. What do you see in terms of looking ahead? What do events look like? Whether it's later in 2021 or 22 or 23, what do they look like?
Yeah, that's obviously a great question that everyone's been asking. The one thing I can say with 100% certainty that in-person events will be back. There is no doubt that humans love to connect and engage with other people in person. You cannot replace the energy and enthusiasm that you feel on the trade show floor. CES was a trade show that I would attend every single year. And it recently wrapped up, and it is impossible to replicate the type of emotion that you feel when you're on the trade show floor at such a large conference. So in person will 100% be back. The question is when. And to be honest with you, nobody knows. Nobody knows. I've read surveys, I've conducted surveys to kind of gauge what people think is a good timeline, and I've seen some responses of Q3, Q4 of this year. And I've also seen some people think Q3 and Q4 of next year, right? I guess the question that should be asked is not when will in-person return. The question is, what will in-person look like once it returns, right? And I frankly don't think we will ever return back to what the trade show environment used to look like, and that's a bold statement, but I really don't. I think now that digital and virtual components will be infused within the in-person experience, it fundamentally changes the goals of what an event professional or a brand is looking for. So let's think about, what can a virtual event do? How can it complement the in-person experience? It increases awareness digitally. It reaches a bigger audience through digital, right? Because you don't have to be in a physical location. You can capture data and information easier through digital realm because people are conditioned to fill out a form versus opting in on the show floor. And in essence, you're going to be able to accumulate data year long through a digital realm, where an in-person event, yes, you have some marketing before a show, during, and after. With digital, you're going to create continuity throughout every single event you have, fostering a year-round community, right? And when you incorporate all of those elements, I think event organizers and brands are going to look at the in-person experience very differently. They're going to think digital first, physical second. But with that being said, they are still complements and they're symbiotic, and they're both going to need each other to truly optimize the event experience.
So I'm sure you've got a variety of hypotheses now in terms of what it looks like. So just maybe I'll throw out a scenario, and maybe you could brainstorm a little bit in terms of what my event might look like or could look like in optimized in sort of with the new tools and new reality. So let's just imagine historically I've been a 3-day in-person event, and I'm international audience, but obviously in one location, and so we've been, say, going 10 or 20 years in that platform, or in that in sort of that form. Fast forward to an event that, say, we're planning for later in 2022 or 2021, saying we're just say we get the all clear, it's okay to meet in person and all that kind of good stuff. And and we can get a venue because the venues are probably all filled up now. But let's just assume we've got a space for our event. How would sort of what would that hybrid event look like? I mean, I've got a whole bunch of things that are kind of bouncing around in my head, but what are some of the how does the online platform sort of plug in, or how does it how do the two work together?
Yeah, and that's the exciting part right now of being in event technology is it's kind of the Wild West right now, and innovation is going to dictate exactly what a hybrid landscape looks like. At the very basic core of what hybrid will look like is allowing an in-person audience and a virtual audience to engage and interact with one another and also consume content simultaneously. So if there's a keynote session at a conference or even a demonstration at a booth, you're going to be able to live stream that digitally. So the in-person audience gets that value, but so does a virtual audience. So right, so having that simulcast experience is going to be essential and the foundation of any hybrid component. Now, kind of approaching it from a different angle, I think what brands are going to start to evaluate going forward, now that there is this acceptance and we've passed the inflection point of virtual, is they're going to evaluate the ROI of events.
Right.
And with a physical trade show, a physical exhibit, right, there are significant investments that are being made. And oftentimes, you're not always evaluating whether or not the investment was justified. A lot of times an exhibitor, sees their competitors on a trade show floor and they make a decision to invest in a trade show. And everyone's happy because they get a free trip to a nice destination, they get to expense dinners, and it's all good. But now I feel the bar is being raised of holding event organizers and marketers accountable of spending money wisely. And, that's an opportunity for a marketer and event organizer to be in the driver's seat, because if they can justify ROI to a CFO or a CEO, that makes them more powerful within an organization. So what that means is event marketers are going to be able to determine an ROI in a physical exhibit and then evaluate an ROI in a virtual exhibit and see how everything is interconnected. My theory is the conclusion will be that it's essential for you to have a number of in-person experiences or exhibits throughout the year, but the vast majority of events should be virtual. And the virtual events should then lead into the physical experience. So while there's still this hybrid connection that happens simultaneously, I think more about kind of the event roadmap throughout the year, right? So the volume of in-person experiences will probably decrease because they're so expensive, but the aggregate number of events that occur throughout the year are going to be greater because virtual events are relatively inexpensive compared to physical events, but they're totally interconnected. And you're still going to need those physical experience to be the tentpole events throughout the year where you can shake someone's hand once we feel comfortable doing that again.
So what I'm hearing is that for my 3-day event, I might have quarterly virtual events that might look at certain verticals within my audience or subsets of my audience and address them or whatnot. But essentially, where we're having interactions on a more frequent basis, leading into the in-person event, which would be done in a sort of a simulcast type
Correct.
way. Yeah.
Exactly. And frankly, because there's relative ease with standing up a virtual event, we see brands adapting to a frequency that occurs at least every month
Mm.
for an event, for a virtual event. And, they don't all have to be massive events. I mean, we believe that, there's going to be segmented events focusing on specific topics, in addition to vast agendas that incorporate more holistically about what the brand wants to do. It's the beauty of virtual is you can experiment for
Yeah.
relatively easy, simple costs and relatively easy stand up of a virtual event, and you can see what works and what doesn't. And then you can monitor where your attendees are going, what are they interested in, how long do they spend at a specific session, and then when you get access to the analytics, you can make determinations about where to invest, what type of content and speakers and exhibitors do you want to invest in for future events.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense. And yeah, I mean, to your point about analytics and metrics, one of the things we've seen, I guess, of virtual events, and I'd love your reaction to it. Besides the idea that you can measure ROI, it also gives you a better platform to test various hypotheses around whether it's specific buyer personas or calls to action or any of the different elements of your lead capturing and customer acquisition. Are you finding that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I alluded to earlier is there's a certain mindset with digital that is very different with a physical experience. In the digital realm, people are just conditioned to filling out a form, right? So I think the virtual event platforms that allow an event organizer to easily collect and aggregate information is going to deliver a wealth of analysis and insights to whoever's organizing the event. And that's something I don't think is possible to achieve in solely in isolation in in-person world. So, if you're a trade show exhibitor and you want to see who comes by your booth, there are multiple ways you can do that. You can do a heat map. You can have a camera that literally monitors where people are gravitating towards what sections of the booth, and then aggregate insights that way. Or you can offer some giveaway, and then have someone fill out a form via an iPad. But it's very fragmented, and that experience is disruptive to the attendee. While virtual, once you give up your information at the very beginning, everything else is just captured behind the scenes. It doesn't impact or affect or deter from the attendee experience. That data information is just being aggregated behind the scenes and then stored in your CRM, which then triggers your marketing team to effectively segment your audiences and then create tailored communication based on what people are actually interested in. And then it can create this flywheel effect, right? The more relevant content you send to the person, the more they're going to want to come back to your next events, right? And through this flywheel effect, you're basically going to create brand affinity and ultimately create growth for your organization.
That's good point. So, maybe just one other thing on the sort of hybrid events and that mix. We go to a lot of virtual events for our clients, and one of the things I saw, and it wasn't on the Accelevents platform, but I was on another platform maybe a couple months ago, and the weirdest thing, we're on day one of this event, halfway through the day, and as I was looking through all the attendees, say a couple thousand attendees, only about 50% had filled in their profile and put in a headshot. And I appreciate the analytics, and clearly that's a huge value prop. But even for the matchmaking, even for all the networking and all that, it really became sort of almost impossible to know who is at the event. It seems like there are still, and I'm not at all blaming this necessarily on the platform. Obviously, there are processes, but I would imagine as well. But I mean, you can have all the technology you want. We all know that people will at times take the path of least resistance in terms of getting set up. I guess are there things again accepting that technology, and part of the challenge too, I think, is that you think of if the software we use on our computers today to do word processing or do a spreadsheet, we only have like 3 choices of sort of platforms. But then you look at the digital event space, and there are 40 plus platforms that we can go on. So every week, everybody that's going to events is essentially on a different platform from an attendee standpoint. So there's a lot of sort of things to adjust to. I guess it's kind of a long way to ask a question, which is, as a event organizer, or even as an exhibitor, are there some things that we can do to influence, that in any way, the filling out of that information? And again, you'll probably never get to 100%, but how do we get to 90, 95, as close to 100 as we can in terms of compliance to that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, right, if you want to get 100% compliance, you're essentially requiring people to fill out a form, which creates friction, and
Yeah.
you're going to piss people off. So that's not the solution. When it comes to onboarding and any kind of tech software SaaS marketer will tell you, onboarding is such a critical experience to delight your customer, your attendees, your audience. Um, so the key is to make it as frictionless as possible, right? Path of least resistance, but make it conversational, where you try to replicate as if you're a greeter within a trade show environment and you're there to pick up your ticket. And a multi-step onboarding process I find is a good way to go about it. So instead of shocking someone with 10 fields on a form and discouraging them right away and making them exit out, ask for their name and email at first and then make it conversational. Greet them by their first name and then try to trigger specific fields, question, data that you think is going to be important for you to know or your exhibitors if you have a demand gen program, and just try to make it as frictionless as possible. You can also incorporate automation as it gets closer to the event or even during the event to prompt a conversational onboarding process to continuously and progressively collect information. But the minute you introduce any kind of friction that impacts the attendee experience, you're done. You're just going to piss people off, and you do not want to do that. You know, something else that you said in terms of the volume of platforms that you're seeing these days. Look, there's no doubt that the event tech space right now is crowded and it's competitive.
Yeah.
And on a continuum, maybe they will all be the same in the future. But right now, they're nuanced, right? Every platform offers something different. At Accelevents, we don't have a virtual 3D trade show floor like you're playing Second Life or SimCity. While other platforms do have that component. And if a brand, a customer trade show association wants that type of experience, we're not your solution. Our emphasis is more on seamless streamlined video streaming to deliver that experience in a high quality fashion and attendee engagement. We allow attendees to engage within our lobby with everyone who attends per session. And then we also have a feature called lounges, which are roundtables where you have micro conversations about specific topics, and it's super interactive and it allows everyone to express themselves. And then we also have one-to-one matchmaking where you can select specific criteria about who you want to get matched with throughout the duration of the conference. So at this moment in time, it is very nuanced, and any kind of guidance that I would provide to someone selecting a platform and doing their due diligence, demo 10 of them, and understand the nuances and the differences among them, and then match it up with your goals and what you want to achieve. Through that process, I promise you one or two will emerge, and then you just have to pick the one with the best customer support at that stage of the game.
Well, I'll make you smile. So we surveyed 40 platforms and we chose Accelevents. So yeah, and we've used it now for a couple of events, and we've got several planned for 2021 that will be on Accelevents. But one thing that we're going to test, and just so you know, we're going to test actually. Our events are 24 hours in length. That's kind of a crazy, actually 25 hours with the after party. But so just outside of a day. And what we're going to do is actually do two sort of very quick sort of orientation sessions and matchmaking sessions before the doors open physically to the event. But to get people on the platform earlier and also to give them a purpose to filling out that info. So you can't matchmake if you can't, if your profile's not filled out. So, but we want to kind of force the issue a little bit. And we don't expect perfection, but we certainly, we know a lot of the value people get from events is actually meeting people. So we want to, content and exhibits only go so far. It's the connections we walk out with.
Yeah, what I find is attendees love value.
Hmm.
And if you give them an experience that extends beyond what the actual event will give you, then people will be more responsive. If you can give attendees kind of this backstage experience at a rock concert, they're going to be more willing to give up their information if they get invited to something that maybe others don't.
Hmm.
So I hear you, and it's all about experimentation and testing and see what works to maximize the number of people who ultimately comply with what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, no, it's all good. So maybe let's close up with a question about maybe speaking specifically to exhibitors and attendees. And I know those are two different audiences, but if we can address both, what are like a couple of top best practices for a virtual event exhibitor? What are the things that they should really pay attention to when they're setting up, whether it's they're setting up their booth or really looking to leverage the event?
Yeah, and in full transparency, I think as a virtual exhibitor, those people are probably facing the most challenges when you're comparing it to an in-person trade show environment, right? On a trade show floor, you're meandering throughout, in and out, different booth spaces, right? And you stumble upon a product or some kind of value that you find interesting, and you go into a booth. Digitally, it's difficult to do that, right? So there are some tips, tactics, hacks that you can incorporate to encourage people to get into your booth. For one, if you're going to invest in an exhibit within a virtual event, I highly encourage you to figure out a way to deliver value during the agenda. If there's a way to get a session that aligns with the content, the theme of the event, that is probably the best way to drive people to your virtual booth in real time. So that should be a priority whenever you decide to invest in a virtual exhibit. Also, connecting with people on LinkedIn is another great way to drive them to the event to begin with. But once you establish that connection and relationship, you can send them a message on LinkedIn and then have them come to your booth. You can also do that organically within the event chat function if the platform you're using has that as well. But in essence, having the ability to cut through the noise and connect with the attendees to drive them to the booth is going to be critical because you're not going to have passive visitors that just stumble upon your exhibit. So you have to be a little more assertive. But the good news is the conversion rates of people going to your virtual booth is going to be much greater. So the volume of people you have to drive there may not be as great as an in-person audience.
Hmm. So just love your reaction to this. So one thing we're going to test in our next virtual event will be we've actually taken 30-minute blocks of the agenda. About every 4 hours is a 30-minute block that we'd have no other content. And in the booths, we're suggesting that the exhibitors either host like an Ask the Experts type session or do a product demo, depending on what it is they're sort of featuring. And in our sense, there's a lot of service providers. So that things like asking an attorney or asking an accountant or whatnot might be appropriate. But any thoughts on something like that
Yeah,
to embed that into the agenda?
absolutely. Any kind of actionable call to actions.
Hmm.
That was a redundant statement, but it makes sense. If you can deliver value or the offer of value, and
Hmm.
someone has to actually perform something to get it, I think that's a great way to tease it. Another idea that I've seen used sparingly, but maybe it should be done more frequently, is having minute long sizzle reels or commercials
Hmm.
that break up the sessions. And if you're an exhibitor or a sponsor of an event, maybe you can create a buffer between every session and then air literally a commercial that drives people to your
Hmm.
virtual booth.
Interesting idea. Cool. So and then the attendee. Are there a couple of best practices that you think of for virtual event attendees? What should they be doing that's maybe different or special for virtual events?
Yeah. So for me, there are two critical factors when I attend a virtual event. It's who's speaking, right, and what type of value am I going to get from their talk. That's important. So I have no problem attending a virtual event and being a passive listener. and deriving value from that experience as if I was watching a TV show. But the attendee engagement component is so important, and you can't expect attendees to figure out how to engage on their own, because it's people are, for the most part, timid about putting themselves out there and connecting with people. So creating an environment that fosters that type of engagement is going to be important. And that's why having a lounge or roundtable workshop component to your event is critical, because once you have, you know, a number of people communicating with one another, whether it's on camera or audio only, but having that engaged audience where people are speaking and listening, you feel more invested as an attendee. You're like, wow, I was able to participate in this event, and I was either able to deliver value or receive value. That is the optimal experience. When you feel like you're involved within the experience, then that attendee is going to have more takeaways than whether they were just a passive listener. So I think getting people who can deliver the goods on stage is key, and then forcing or encouraging an environment of interaction. Those are the two main pillars of a successful virtual event.
Yeah, and I wonder about your thoughts on this. Is one of the things we've observed of virtual events is, if you go to an in-person event, you go to a workshop or a keynote, is you really don't know what the audience is thinking. You don't know what the people sitting next to you or across the aisle are thinking. But the one really cool thing about a virtual event is, because people are chatting, and obviously each audience is different in terms of the volume of chatting, but where there is a decent volume, you actually get a sense of what people are thinking, what their questions are, what they're responding to, what they're excited about, all those types of things that you quite often you really don't have a sense of that in an in-person event. So it can create a better understanding, and even the ability to spot others in the room, either who are like-minded or who are you ought to have a cup of coffee with them because they have interesting thoughts or whatnot
Right.
that you can learn from. But
Absolutely. And
yeah.
just to bring it full circle, if the expectation is a brand or a trade show association has multiple virtual events throughout the year and they're connected by community, right? So you allow them to engage and interact with one another in some kind of chat environment, then you're going to start seeing familiar faces, attend these events, and you're going to feel more at ease with engaging with other people. There's this cool dynamic element where in an in-person environment, traditionally, you see your colleagues, your industry friends, your industry foes, every couple of months. But with digital or virtual, you can stay connected year round, every single day.
Yeah, and I think it really seems, I think the couple things that I've really pulled out of this conversation are um, the the uh, that virtual events can really augment the event space in quite a, even as in person comes back, in quite a way, in quite a significant way, in that the frequency will allow more discourse, and also a greater audience, which obviously amplifies whatever connections can happen, and whatever information can be shared. So that it's really incumbent on event organizers and hosts to look at how they're, and I would imagine many are right now in planning their next 12 and 24 months, to look at how do they continue to build their audience. And I've talked to some event organizers who have seen a couple hundred-fold increase in audience by having virtual events this year, because they're able to attract people in a much from a much bigger pool than they would for their in-person events. So there's some real excitement there. It's I think most of us are excited to actually get back and shake someone's hand or hug them or have a cold beer with them. But the idea of actually having more transactions and more interaction is also exceptionally exciting. But any sort of additional thoughts or closing thoughts in terms of
Yeah.
where we're going?
Yeah, just to emphasize a point that we both made earlier, in person we'll be back. Everyone wants to engage and connect with one another. I work at predominantly a virtual events platform that's already kind of adapting into what a hybrid world will look like once it does come back. But from the bottom of my heart, I'll tell you that I miss events so much. I miss going to a ball game. I miss going to a concert. I miss going to Vegas and going to a trade show. And I cannot wait until that's allowed again. But as difficult as 2020 was for everyone, but specifically within our industry of events, I do believe as we reflect, we'll see some silver linings. I think there's a vast opportunity that's going to present the industry that we don't see right now. I think the event space is going to be better for this disruption, and I think that the savvy, smart event organizers who are able to adapt to the times are really going to come out ahead. So, just to wrap, I think the future is bright for the event space, and I'm very excited to see where it's going to take us.
No, I think you're absolutely right. So, not a trick question by any means, but I'm curious, just, as you were talking about the various new modules, the lounge and so on Accelevents, when are you going to add the "Can I buy you a beer" or "Can I buy you a cup of coffee" module, so that we can get sort of a fun one-on-one meetings with folks? Is that
interestingly, that's not too far off.
Good. I like that.
We've had a lot of delivery apps reach out to us to see how they can incorporate their services organically within our platform. So I would have to say it's not too far off that you can have either an event host or an attendee send over Starbucks while you're still talking to them virtually.
That would be a hoot for sure. Well, I guess Starbucks is going to be busy for the next couple of months helping with the COVID or the vaccine deployment. So they may be a little busy, but
they'll always find time to sell their coffee, though. I can guarantee you that.
You're probably right. Well, you could get maybe the coffee and an injection at the same time. It could be
two for one. I would take that. Yeah.
Alan, this has been a real pleasure, and you're just a wealth of great knowledge and insight. So I really want to thank you for taking the time with us today.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Please come back for our next podcast, and certainly like it so you get all the updates on upcoming shows. So thanks again, and we'll see you all soon.